So, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. We've got some amazing HR professionals with us today, and the idea is just to simply have a very relaxed conversation around some of the people and some of the HR issues and conversations we're having with our clients right now and local businesses. So, we're looking forward to getting everyone's insights, everyone's opinions, and yeah, it'd be good to hear all your thoughts and experiences.
So if we start by everybody introducing themselves, if that's okay, just to give an insight into you and your background, then that would be great. Who'd like to go first?
I'll start. So my name's Jo McMeekin. I own a business called Face to Face HR based in Banbury. I've been in HR and training over 24 years, mainly started out in hospitality, but very much customer focused industries. So yeah, lots of experience, lots of things that go on in hotels that I could write a book about.
Super stuff.
I bet.
Sarah?
Hi, I'm Sarah from People Pad HR. I set the business up about 6 years ago after a 30-year career in HR in-house, and we are sector agnostic, worked across a load of different sectors, so it doesn't matter what sector you are, you've all got the same people with the same problems.
Amazing, thank you. And Lorna?
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Lorna and I run Farrell HR. So we've been going for around 2 years. That followed a career for me of over 20 years in logistics and manufacturing businesses. So working with some large global corporates, and now I work with any size business, but my main focus is sort of mid-sized businesses that are looking to grow and future-proof and need a bit of help and expertise along the way with their people.
Super, thank you. And lastly, Nikki.
Hey, I'm Nikki. A bit like Lorna, really. After 20 years in HR, I set up Breakout HR based in Cirencester in Gloucestershire, and now I support businesses. So most of my career was manufacturing, which I love, but I support anyone now. That sounds anyone will have me, up to sort of that sort of 80 employee mark, really. So those sort of businesses who generally don't have any HR, and they need someone, an expert on the end of the phone. And yeah, just started my 3rd year, so far so good.
Wonderful, great. So we're very lucky then to have such a mix of knowledge, experience, sector experience, here to share lots of knowledge and insight. So
lots of wisdom here. Us. Yeah, thank you for joining us. So first question then, so we put this out to all of our clients. We say, come on, give us your questions. So we've had quite a few, and so the first question we'd like to ask is attracting talent. So we'll start with you, Lorna, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So this came from an engineering and manufacturing SME, and they're saying we struggle to attract good people. Is it salary, flexibility, culture, or is it something else?
Yeah, so I'm definitely seeing this as well. I think it's a struggle to find good people in the first place. And I know we'll come on to then talk about actually retaining them when you find those gems. But I think, we're in a really difficult market at the moment. There's loads of unemployment. You're looking at the government is looking at how can we get more people back to work, the younger generation into work. And it doesn't seem to then match up with actually like your clients asked there. Why are we struggling so much? I would always encourage my clients to start with get back to basics. So what is it you're looking for? Both in terms of skills, experience, but also the fit, the person, their behaviours and so on. And are you being really clear on that? And then actually take the time, use, one of us on the call can help with this at times as well. Take the time to actually go and benchmark, look at those salary levels, look at the job environment, whether it's flexible hybrid working, whether it's certain benefits, things like that. And just double check that you are on a par with what the market is doing out there. But it's definitely a tough time for sure.
Yeah, I think that's some really good insight, and we're hearing that all the time. Has anyone else got anything to add to that, do you think, or do you feel the same?
I think I would add, I think generally there's plenty of good people out there, but I think many of them are valuing current job security at the moment more than anything else, because they want predictability in their life. I think there's so much going on in the world, in the UK, in their local community, that they're really valuing, predictability and job security. So it's like, how do companies, get that across from the interview process to make people think, well, actually, it is worth jumping ship.
Yeah, and I'm seeing businesses are still almost rushing into recruitment, and sometimes they could just step back and look at their job specs and say, what are we actually asking for versus what do we really need? Because I think it's really easy to go, well, we've always had someone with a degree or 7 to 10 years experience and all these sort of cliches that we keep seeing. But actually, maybe someone with 2 years experience will be brilliant and you can develop them. So I think we're very quick to dismiss people. And I think I think it's very easy just to say, well, this person left, I want that carbon copy. But every recruitment is an opportunity to say, what do we really need? And are our expectations a little bit too high? And then you'll find that you're probably like ignoring a lot of talent out there because of those high expectations.
Yeah, or they haven't got SAP experience, or they haven't got Sage, or something like that, where you can actually
which is
train
all
that.
teachable. Yeah,
Absolutely.
What we've found a couple of times is actually instead of going for the carbon copy, as Nikki says, is there someone that can step into that role and be developed into it that you've already got in-house? And then if you're recruiting at a more junior level, maybe, or a less experienced level, it's probably easier to find a candidate to fill those shoes than it is to find your more experienced candidate. And we found that a couple of times just recently.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Okay, fantastic. So we'll move on to question 2. So this is regarding candidate dropout. And Sarah, we'll start with you. So the question from one of our clients who are in the professional services, they're an accountancy firm. They have asked, we're recruiting, but candidates keep dropping out. What are employers getting wrong?
So what I'm hearing is processes that have got way too many stages. So candidates either get bored, get snapped up by somebody else, or they start to think, do these guys really know what they want? And is that somewhere that I want to work? So I think look at the stages of the recruitment process that you're putting people through. And also, the other thing I'm hearing is they didn't really sell it to me. I don't really get what I'm going to be doing. I'm not really sure it's the right place for me. And if you're trying to lever somebody out of another job into your business, then you need to be really clear about why they should be moving, what benefits they're going to get, and kind of, map the path out for them. Nobody wants to say yes and arrive and then just mill around for a couple of months until they've worked out what's going on. They want to know what they're stepping into right away.
Yeah. I agree.
Really
I agree with that. Yeah, totally. And especially as you just mentioned a moment ago, it was brought up that, a lot of people are, as you said, Joanne, wanting to have that job security. So really to entice people out and have the confidence to move forward in a new business and a new company, there needs to be more shared in that respect to give them that security, that comfort, maybe.
I think certainly what I've seen is the lack of keeping candidates warm throughout the whole process as well, because they will get cold feet for all the reasons Sarah's just said. So I think if your process is taking a bit longer than normal, which happens, things happen in the business, recruitment has to stall, and I don't mean stalling for weeks, but the interview can't take place that day, or you can't get back on the day that you said you'd get back to them. You just need to keep in touch, because you need to keep that candidate warm. And I think, again, going back to what somebody just said there, was it's all about an image of the business, isn't it? Do I really want to work for a business that actually can't even be bothered to keep in touch throughout this whole process?
Yeah. Oh, they're not looking very organised in the process. Exactly.
Yes.
It does put people off.
And I've seen some terrible interviewer behaviour in my time. I could write a book on that alone.
You should.
I think companies forget it's a two-way process, and actually you're there to be professional, to sell the business, to sell the role, as Joanne just said. And if you're sat opposite someone and they're late, or I've seen two where you've got 2 interviewers and one comes in on time, the other one strolls in 20 minutes later. I'm sorry I'm late. It's like you're just creating a really terrible impression, and people have got choice nowadays, so they're just going to go, well, actually, if you don't show an interest in me, then maybe I'm not going to show an interest in you, and you get that high level of dropout. So candidate experience is key.
It's really key, isn't it? We hear it all the time, don't we, Hannah?
We do.
That's what we always say, we're people first, because you have to look after the candidates, because they just get cold feet, quite rightly. It's a big decision, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's nerve-wracking moving jobs. So
of course it is. I'd hate to have to do it.
I don't want to do it again.
I don't either. I remember those days. So great. So on the other scale then, so retention, we've had a couple of growing SMEs actually ask this, and now they're trying to compete with the larger companies, and they say they can't keep matching all these salary increases, which we're seeing a lot, especially in marketing. What else actually helps retain, do you think, good people?
I think I've definitely. Oh, sorry.
Shall we start with Nikki
I was
or
gonna
Lorna?
jump
Does it
in
matter?
there.
Well,
You go,
Lorna's in, I'll
Nikki.
let you take it.
Yeah, I just had this thought where I'm reading a lot at the moment about the different generations in the workplace, and actually salary seems to be mattering less to those earlier in their careers. But I think the mistakes that some employers make is they assume that it's, you know, we need to pay certain salaries. Yes, there are minimum wages and so on, but actually I think the mistake that can be made is you're not actually asking your staff what they value, what they want. You know, in certain sectors, in certain sizes of business, people can value things like flexibility, and where they work and how they work, and being trusted to work as an adult much more than having the highest salary they've ever had. And that's certainly what I'm seeing. So I don't know whether there's a misconception with some employers that they're perhaps falling behind because they can't pay high salaries, but missing that gap of, you know, actually you haven't actually asked your staff what they're looking for and what they value in their workplace and from their employer.
Yeah, so it's little added extras and those little benefits that they can offer, like you say, that flexibility. People just value that so much if there's no hierarchy and they're adults, you know, treated like adults.
And just to follow on to what Lorna said, I think employers need to be very clear on what their employee value proposition is. It doesn't have to be a massive, you know, launch like some of the big corporates will do. You know, it could be a one pager, but just being very clear about what that EVP is and actually market it all the way through the process. Because at the end of the day, you know, we want, you know, somebody to choose, you know, why would they choose to work here? Why would they choose to stay? You know, why would they want to give their best? And money is only the actual pay salary is only just a small part of it, really.
And there's what you can do that doesn't cost the earth. I mean, if you review your benefits and actually step back, you know, if you step back and everything is statutory, then it just shows that you're doing the bog standard, you know, and you see job adverts, don't you, that's like 20 days holiday and 8 bank holidays, like it's a gift and things like that. So giving extra holiday, great development opportunities, you know, putting people on new projects, opportunities to learn and grow. People value that now, and they value experiences. And so money, yes, we've all got a mortgage to pay, but money isn't everything. And I think people do value the great management, great leadership, and psychological safety, and all these sorts of things that, don't cost anything to implement.
Some of the benefits you can add, you know, they cost pounds per month, but they make a big difference. You know, something like a cash plan, you know, as an employer, it costs you maybe £5 a head per month, but people can claim back, you know, 200 quid for their glasses, or a visit to the chiropractor or the physiotherapist, visit to the dentist, those sorts of things. And that, you know, that actually makes a big difference to people, knowing that those big expenses are actually covered by this policy that your employer pays for. And the other part of it is, and you know, Julie, when we worked together back in the day, is you really understood our culture, what we were looking for, the exact people that we wanted, and you sold it for us. So I think as well, to employers, make sure you are working with people like Julie and Hannah, and you are really giving them a great brief so they totally understand what that candidate is going to get, because then you can look at the candidates and, you know, sometimes, you know, I know we've had conversations in the past where you've said, yeah, I don't think they're not really going to suit you, or, oh, you know, this one is absolutely perfect for you. And the more people you're working with through the process who understand what you're offering to the candidate, the better.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, we get so excited about people sometimes. We chuck the CV away, so forget that. Just listen, just meet them. We're like, please meet them. We love a wild card.
Well, you're dealing with people, you know. I think that's the main thing. You're dealing with people. People don't fit into a spreadsheet, and, you know, people don't fit into a norm. There is no norm. Everyone's individual. So it's really important to get under the skin of candidates and job seekers, as well as under the skin of employers, because you're joining two people together, so it's important for it to be right. It works for the long term rather than a short-term fix. So next question is about hybrid working. So Joe, we will start with you. This is from one of our clients who is office based. They have said hybrid working is causing tension in our team. How do you set expectations without upsetting people?
It is such a contentious issue, and we feel like we're 6 years on from COVID now, and it should just be part of the norm. Yet there is a clear insistence from a lot of companies to be back in the office. And I personally, for me, when I looked at this, I thought the simple approach is just have a policy, have a very clear policy that sets out your approach and your expectations, and then anything outside of that, I think there's other processes, isn't there? There's flexible working. So if somebody wants to do something different that's outside e-policy, it's dealt with under a different process. I don't think it needs to be much more complicated than that. I think it's when you start seeing different applications to the policy, or the policies there, or we're on a 30, 70%, of the workday in the office, and people aren't sticking to it, and then they see the bosses aren't sticking to it. So I think those are the things that cause upset, rather than a company just saying it's 40, 60, 3 days in the office, 2 days out of the office. You can choose whatever days, and as long as everybody's sticking to it and it's being managed, you've got no reason to complain. And I think any of us are grateful to be able to work from home these days. Although not today, because I have no air conditioning. I wish I was still on client site with their air conditioning.
So just consistency, you think? Just being consistent with process and policy.
Yeah.
Do you think
what the business needs?
Do you think it's limiting for companies to be now more office based? I know we're seeing more clients saying that they're wanting to bring staff back in, and there is this bit of a disparity with what's going on out there, with so many more job seekers saying no, we've proven that we can work either remotely or hybrid, and they're staying very true to what they're looking for. But understandably, some businesses are saying no, we want them back into the office. What's your take on it? What do you think the challenges or the positives are around that?
You're right. I think there's definitely, particularly the younger generation, because I think work-life balances is so much more important to them. I think there's a generation of us who've got used to just doing exactly what we need when we need to do it. And I think we've got to start listening to that generation. I think there is plenty of proof to show that people are productive working from home, sometimes a lot more productive. And actually productivity leads to engagement, leads to retention, leads to, overall better running of the business. So I think businesses have just got to be very clear on why they're saying no. And let's face it, looking just as the example I used before, flexible working, there's got to be, one of the 8 legal business reasons to say no to flexible working. I think having a little bit of a framework around, well, actually, why are we saying no? What assessment has been done, rather than just trying to place all of this mistrust and assumptions that people are doing, whatever they might be doing and not doing work. My business at the time of COVID, and I was there for 10 years, they were very much based on outcomes. They're like, go to sports day, do whatever you need to do with your kids. It's about your outcomes and your output. And my output was brilliant, and they were really happy with that. But yes, I did go to sports day, and I very rarely missed it because my company were really flexible, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah. Hence why you were probably there 10 years.
yeah. Until I got made redundant.
I do
continue
think
the theme.
It's limiting, it's reducing your talent pool if you are an employer that's saying we are full-time in the office or 4 days a week. And I always I find it such an interesting topic, and I would always ask that business owner or director why. Yes, you have a business to run, and absolutely, if the best thing is for your people to be on that site, and clearly, I worked in manufacturing, there were so many roles that could never be done from home because you've got a big injection molding machine that doesn't move from its spot in the factory, but actually if it's about understanding why, and there's a good business reason why, actually that leader should be able to really clearly, it's all about communication, right? Communicate to your workforce. This is why I value having you in the office. This is why I value being together to collaborate or to have that teamwork opportunity. I think that goes a long way, and it certainly goes further than a mandate that says we're in the office 5 days a week, end of conversation. I think it's about the communication, it's about the trust. So I would always sort of lead in with a conversation around, is that right for your business? And if so, have you shared that with your team? Have you sort of communicated to them?
Yeah. Oh, I think a lot of it with the smaller businesses that won't allow it, they're quite adamant. I think it is a trust. They don't trust their employees, which is another conversation, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because as
Well,
Joe said,
that's
it's
linked
about
back to the
outcome.
answer of all the other questions then.
Yeah.
That's why you can't recruit people, because, you know, ultimately
Yeah.
you know, why can't I work from home? Why aren't they flexible? The answer in your candidate's mind is always, because they don't trust me. Do I want to work there?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, if you're asking people to come into the office these days, you need to, if you know, as long as it's not, you know, a hotel or a manufacturing, you know, as long as it's not a job that can only be done on site, if you're asking people to come in, you need to make the coming in, you know, worth the commute. So what is it that your team are getting in the office that they need, that they are not getting when they're working from home? And that could be things like, you know, the opportunity to meet and do something together as a team, or to, you know, address a particular project or something like that. And as long as people can see the difference between the work I do at home and the work that I have to go into the office to do, I think most people are, as long as you're being flexible, most people are flexible. But if you're saying it's 5 days a week and clearly people can do stuff from home, and I think Joe or Nikki, somebody said, and it's about what the boss is doing as well. Because if you say, you know, we're in the office 3 days a week and we work from home 2 days a week, and then, you know, the boss is never in on the 3 days that everyone else is in, then, you know, your culture is about observed behaviour. So if they observe you doing that, they're all going to want to do it as well.
Yeah, that's when the frustrations come in, isn't it? Thank you. It's such an interesting topic, isn't it? We could go on about that one for ages, I think. So this one's interesting as well with sales. We've heard this before. So a difficult top performer. So a sales-led business, one of their strongest performers is becoming very difficult to manage, becoming a bit complacent. How would you approach this? And Lorna, did you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of performance issues coming across my desk lately. I'm not sure what's going on. It's always interesting when you ask, and I know everyone around the virtual table will have heard this a lot. You know, you have the conversation that says, well, what is the challenge that you're experiencing, and have you spoken to them? Have you had a conversation? And of course it's like, what? I need to speak to them. But actually, joking aside, it would be understanding, okay, what's the difference that you're seeing? What's the challenge? You know, what's the problem really? Can you identify, hopefully as their line manager, you're having regular check-ins with them and understanding maybe something's happened, something's different. But actually the first step is then being able to articulate what that challenge is and where they're perhaps falling short of the expectation, whether it's sales targets or other goals. And being able to have that adult, you know, let's treat people like grown-ups, adult conversation that says, look, this is what I've noticed, this is the impact. How are you? You know, what's going on and how are we going to address this? Yes, what comes further down the line can be moving into a more formal performance process. But at that stage, I would hope that it's quite simply an adult conversation to check in, to share the concerns, to understand what's happening, and then to make a plan to get back to where you need them to be.
Yeah.
I think with this, I think the irony is the fact that they're saying one of our strongest performers.
Yeah.
So that to me just signals straight away something's not right.
Something's
just ask
happened.
The question. Managers are so quick to, you know, jump on what the symptoms are, but they forget to or try, don't even, you know, bother or avoid looking for what actually is causing them. You know, just a simple conversation. I mean, I think that one of the classic ones I had was, you know, this person was coming in always late and their manager just didn't do anything about it, and then eventually erupted and said, I wanted to do something about it. And, you know, just through asking having a conversation with this young lady was she had caring responsibilities for our grandma. And all we had to do was just move her times slightly, her start times. It really wasn't difficult. The solution was just so obvious. But I was like, why is it taking you so long to just ask? You're telling me she's great. What's wrong with her? Well, if she was great, that she can still be great, but something must be up. Just like we would with our friends. If you saw one of your mates down the pub and they didn't look their normal happy self, you'd say, are you all right? You know, you're not your normal happy self. Why is it we can't do that in the workplace? I never understand that.
Yeah,
I think people jump to that it's a problem, they've got to leave, and that, like saying the question, it was the strongest performer. You don't turn into a bad performer overnight.
Exactly.
You know, if you started that way, fair enough. But if you were brilliant and now you're not, you're right, Joe. It's something has happened, something's going on in their life, something's maybe happened in the workplace, but something has made their behaviour change. And I think we forget. I think you said it, Lorna, like just ask how they are, have a simple conversation. And I think people forget that we're all human and things affect us and things are going on in our lives, and they will affect the workplace because we're not all robots. But just that simple, I've noticed you're not yourself, how are you, can change everything and stop a problem happening.
And I think with salespeople, sorry, Julie, I was just going to say, I think with salespeople as well, a lot of times it's, you know, they're still performing, but the behaviour, you know, it's things like they won't follow the process. They're not doing what we ask. They're not turning up to the meeting or the team meeting. They're always out with the clients or something. And you can, you know, especially if you've got salespeople who are, you know, outside of the business, out, you know, talking to clients or introducers and things like that, you can sometimes get a situation where they lose sight of where their loyalties lie almost. And that's on, you know, so what are you doing to keep them engaged in the business as well? But a lot of times people are afraid, aren't they? Because they're our top salesperson. If I say something, you know, they might leave, and then we'll lose, you know, our top salesperson. My experience, and I've worked with sales teams quite a bit as a HR business partner. My experience is that sometimes if you have a, you know, and it's not caused by anything, it is just a truly toxic person who is your top salesperson. Actually, if you do end up parting company with them, all of a sudden everyone underneath thrives, because that behavior, what might not have been holding their results back, but it was holding everyone else's results back. So, you know, sometimes that it's something that's not to be afraid of, and you can't, you know, the culture of your business will not survive one person who has constantly excused bad behavior just because they are the one that's bringing in the megabucks.
I think you all make it sound so easy, but I think with an SME that doesn't have a HR function, they're so scared of having that conversation. Like you said, Sarah, just in case that top performer says, oh, okay, well, I've got loads of people trying to headhunt me, I'm off, you know, they suddenly panic. But like you say, the rest of the team may thrive. Or
I think there's also the worry for a lot of businesses of what to actually say that's right from an HR perspective, because there's so many legalities now that it feels quite frightening for some, maybe some more traditional businesses that have been really part of this transitional period. You know, they've operated for many, many, many years successfully pre-COVID, that worked a certain way, and then COVID has really catapulted everybody into a whole new way of working, and it's trying to change the kind of the business thought process around, you know, some people who do prefer their team to come in. It might be because historically that's what they've always done, and they feel it's hard to lose kind of that bit of control of seeing them in the workplace. And it also feeds into, do we now need the size of offices that we have? You know, it's so much more of a bigger conversation. Or it might be also, we kind of find a lot of line managers, they're frightened of getting it wrong as well, saying the wrong thing and then putting a company in any sort of jeopardy, which therefore shows maybe where some training and learning needs to be given to line managers too, which opens up another whole category, another thing to kind of go through. It seems like just pulling at a bit of thread, doesn't it? You pull one bit and then lots of different bits come out. So,
but I think the reality is the jeopardy is 3 or 4, 5 steps ahead, and there's lots of things we can do to cut off the company being in jeopardy. And I've always said that to line managers, you know, think, oh, worst case scenario, employment tribunal. There's loads of things we can do before we even get to that stage, especially when they're not hearing them till 2029 at the moment.
You'll be fine.
We've got loads of time to sort this one out.
I think
that's really comforting.
I spend a lot of time when I'm supporting a manager with what they think is a poor performance case, but sometimes, you know, like I said, it doesn't end up being that. It's that something's happened in the employee's life at home, perhaps. But what they seem to value is actually kind of taking the panic away from them, breaking it down, coming up with a bit of a plan, and those that need it as well, like a script for them to follow in the meeting. And I'll even go and like be short of holding their hand, but be with them in a meeting if that's what's going to be helpful for them. But I always make sure I follow up with a, like to Joe's point, going the other way. Okay, how did we get here? And what can we put in place for you to avoid having this happen again? So those, you know, keeping on top of your, I know we're going to come on to this, but on top of your probationary periods, having your regular check-ins and one-to-ones, looking at performance reviews and feeding back and seeking feedback from your staff as well, before it gets to the stage where you go, oh my gosh, my top performer is no longer performing well. So trying to get them to put in those preventative measures as well. So it's less of an emergency call next time.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Right, so the next one is new employee not working out. So Sarah, we'll start with you with this one. So this is from one of our clients who's a small business owner, and they've said, how long should we persevere with a new employee before deciding if they are not the right fit?
Oh, let me just climb onto my soapbox here.
Here we go.
I want to start with, before you decided that they were the right person, I want to start with your documentation. And, you know, when was the last time you looked at your contracts and your handbook or your policies, procedures? Do they sound like you? Because I think that a lot of failed probations are around, we do an interview, I love you, you love me, you want to come and work for us. I send you out my contract and my handbook, which haven't been reviewed for like 6 years. And they were copied and pasted from something from a company I worked before. And the candidate reads them and goes, oh, that doesn't sound like the people that interviewed me. But, you know, you offer them the job, they think, okay, they sign forms, they come on the first day. And because they've had that first sort of piece of dissonance between what they met and what came out on the paperwork, their brain then, because neuroscience programs us to look for things we need protection from, their brain is looking for all the times that you don't sound like the person they had the interview with, all the things that aren't quite like they were expecting them to be. And that has an impact on their motivation, on their confidence, on their psychological safety, and on their ability to do the job that you've employed them to do. And what happens then is, you're 3 months down the line and you're thinking they're not as good as I thought they were going to be. And they're thinking this isn't as great as I thought it was going to be. And that's why you end up failing people in probation, because you don't start the process off with very clear expectations about what's expected, what's the culture, what are you going to find, what are the behaviours, you know, how is it we are here, how do we deliver this?
Yeah, that's really
Amen.
I love that. That's such a great answer.
Really clear.
Oh yeah, we
Really
love
clear.
that.
Yeah.
Does anyone have anything they'd like to add to that?
Yeah, for me, I've had the same response to every single manager who's ever said that to me across my whole career in HR and training, and that is, can you honestly put your hand on your heart and say you've done everything possible to make sure this person succeeds? So, you know, did you think you recruited the right person? Did you onboard them properly? Did you make sure they had the right equipment? Did you buddy them up? Did you give them some training? Did you send them on external training? Have you done absolutely everything possible? Have you had probation reviews? Have you even spoke to them? Have you checked in how they're doing? If you haven't, toddle off, go and do all that, and then come back to me. If they're still really bad, I'll help you, you know, support that. But until you have done all that and worked within your probation, you know, extending your probation, you know, you can't, you know, I don't think morally it's right to get rid of somebody if you can't really say you've done everything possibly to make, you know, sure that person succeeds. And actually normally managers sort of run off with their tail between their legs and then come back later and say, oh yeah, I've done this, I've done that.
I think the phrase, they're not the right fit. Like, I'd first ask that person, why aren't they the right fit? Because if they're not a carbon copy of the rest of your team, that doesn't mean they're bad. It just means they're different. And difference is good. And actually difference challenges the way we do things around here. And if you hire in that same image all the time, you're just going to get the same results. And I see a lot of they don't fit, they're not right, they don't match everyone else. I worked for a company that hired this person because she was different and because she approached things in a different way and she'd shake things up. And then she came in, and for the next 2 years, it was in a department I didn't look after, thankfully. They beat the crap out of her for being what they then, because she didn't conform to the group. And it's like, but you hired her to shake the group up. And she must have been the most, she was obviously not happy in the business because she was treated that way. And yeah, it's this whole fit is a really interesting one. And I think it's very easy to say they said one thing, they're not like us, or they didn't come to the pub for drinks, so they don't fit. And it's, I'd always challenge, what do they mean by they're not a good fit? Because a lot of it is coming from a place of bias as well. So I'm always interested in that side of things. Not if they're genuinely not performing and you've done everything you can, that is what your probationary period's for. So manage it well, but challenge yourself to go, why are you telling me they don't fit? Because I'm always intrigued by that phrase.
I think it's actually a really intriguing one, isn't it? We hear it a lot in recruitment. We'll say, well, sometimes employers will say, I just don't get the feeling that this is the right person or it's not the right fit. But it's very hard to be able to quantify what's subjective and what's objective, and where that measure comes from. So I think that's a really interesting point you made. Sorry, Lorna, you were about to say.
No, it's okay. I think, it's more of a challenge for smaller businesses, but I would say where you can, make sure that you're weaving this into your hiring process. So when you're interviewing someone, you're not just checking, have they got this particular qualification that I need, or have they got the required experience in this industry? It's actually trying to get to know them a bit more as a person and how that aligns. So Nikki, your point's a great one, because you do want differences and diversity of thought. But actually, when you can layer that against your company's sort of values and DNA, how does that person fit alongside those or not? And I think my concern is that interviews are perhaps not, there's not as much emphasis placed on them that should be. I hear stories that, well, did you sort of work out how was the recruitment process? Well, we didn't really interview them, it was so-and-so's mate, or they came in for a quick chat, and then and that's a challenge, isn't it? Because again, you're not setting the individual up for success either, because you're not giving them the chance to test out, is this right for me? So I think where possible, spending that time, investing that time up front is so much more valuable than having to spend your time later on trying to decide if someone's the right fit or not.
Especially now as well with the legislation changes, it's really, people should have already done this work. Really,
they should already be there.
Yeah.
And do you think there's anything from an initial interview perspective that people could be implementing or thinking about differently? Because again, from our perspective, sometimes companies will be very, very thorough with an interview, whether it's first, second, third stage and testing and psychometrics. Others will just do one and say after half an hour, I just didn't feel it. It's just not quite right. And it's very hard for someone to prove what they can bring within half an hour when they're already feeling quite uncomfortable in that, as anyone would in an interview situation. So is there anything you think should be like a bare minimum to be able to give people that opportunity to really shine?
There's a big argument now, isn't there, for giving people at least a number of questions in advance.
Okay.
So that people perform differently under pressure, and we all know that interviews are sort of really nerve-wracking for some people. So giving them the opportunity to come with some prepared answers to really be able to show off what they can do. So there is an argument for that. But also I would say train your managers. Like the amount of people that are out interviewing, making decisions, and they've never been trained to interview in their life. So do they really know what they're looking for? Do they really know about bias and why they might choose the Liverpool fan because I'm a Liverpool fan, or these sorts of things that creep in. But not many companies train their managers to interview and what to look for to make it less subjective.
And I would agree, because I think in my sort of experience, there's a lot of managers who will say, oh, what would you do with this situation, and what would you do in that situation? Whereas I'm a firm believer in more behavioural interviewing style questions. Tell me about the last time you had a difficult customer. What did you do to solve the issue? Because people then have to draw on real life experience to be able to answer that question. It's a better predictor of how people are going to react in the future or act in the future in the role. Whereas if you just say, oh, what would you do in this scenario? People are going to give a bit more of a textbook answer, and therefore they're not really going to be able to really showcase So I think sometimes I've definitely had those interviews where I've come out and went, God, there's no way I've got that job because I didn't even get a chance to sell myself. The interviewing questions were terrible. And you know, when you find yourself trying to add more information to it, I mean, I do talk a lot, so but then you're really conscious about, they didn't really ask that question, but I feel like I'm not really getting a chance to even sell myself. You know, and that's coming from an HR professional.
It's such a long question, and you forget because you're so nervous. Actually, what was the essence of that question? Can you repeat that, please? You know, and it puts you off straight away.
I like the idea of having interview questions given beforehand as well, especially because
actually, that's great.
We're all so different, and you know, at Cameo we work with psychometric testing. We kind of use insights, so we use colours, and everybody has different strengths and qualities. There are some greens, as we call them, who are kind of much more like myself. You want time to sit and think, you know, rather than being reactive straight to a point. You know, you're very considered with your answers and want to say the right thing. It's important to you. Others can perform brilliantly straight away and just have that answer. So I think it's nice to be able to accommodate that for everybody, so that it gives people a fair chance.
Yeah, and I think it certainly helps people who are neurodiverse as well to have those questions. And I think, wasn't there a recent case where somebody had claimed the fact that they'd asked for the interview questions in advance, they had ADHD, they were told that they could have them, didn't get sent them, and then when they were there, they said, oh, I was going to get the interview questions, could I have them now? One person went to go yes, and the other person went, no, you can't have them. And it's just, and actually I worry because my daughter's neurodiverse, and sort of think, well, actually, how's her interview experience going to be, you know, if she doesn't get the opportunity to really sort of sell herself, you know? So I think adding that into the arena as well, you know, it's about being more inclusive, isn't it?
Absolutely. What harm can it do? Because it just gives people more opportunity to really, you know, drill down and bring out their experience, doesn't it? And show off, show what they can do. So why not?
Yeah, totally.
So this brings us on to employment law HR update. This is the big one. So Nikki, we'll start with you. What's the biggest employment law or HR change employers should be paying attention to right now, would you say?
I think we're all probably thinking the same one, aren't we? I think the obvious one, and I think the one that's certainly scaring most of my clients, is the change to unfair dismissal rights. It's going from 2 years to 6 months. So basically anyone you pretty much hire from about now will be able to claim unfair dismissal.
It's from starting now,
within 6 months. So I think people think, well, I've got 6 months, I can have a 6 month probation and then exit, but by the time you add the statutory notice, they're through that. So I think that 2 years has always given people an almost like a get out of jail free card, and I think it's made employers probably a little lazy because they're like, well, I'll pass the probation because I've still got another 18 months and I've got lots of time and I can just boot people out, which is always brutal. But now that 6 months means there's this huge focus, and there needs to be really good management of the probation, which we've all just been talking about in a couple of the previous answers, because you need to really show that you're making good objective decisions and doing everything in the right way, and not just using that sort of get out of jail free after 23 and a half months or something like that. So I think that's scaring a lot of people,
happens,
and I think that's the big one.
And I think it's also worth noting, we're all talking about from the 1st of July, any new starters, but actually what's not being mentioned, and I'm trying to, in the moment, doing a client briefing for all my clients to send out, there's a transition group as well. And there's a transition group coming from, I think, when I remind myself, it was like from the January 25, there's a transition group that will still be able to claim, they will have the right to claim unfair dismissal. So I think we're all concentrating on the 1st of July starters onwards, but we need to be also making sure our clients understand that there's quite a large transition group. And yes, their service might be 18 months, but it doesn't matter. It's 18 months, you know, they'll still have the right after January to be able to claim unfair dismissal. And I think you're right, Nikki. I think, you know, employers are not even there, and they really should be. But for me, it's everything we've talked about, having good recruitment, you know, really good onboarding, you know, a proper probation period, people to actually who know how to train other people to be able to do the job. That's all standard stuff. I don't think we're banging any new drum here, are we? You know, it's all stuff that we see as really good HR practice, But, you know, I've only been in consultancy since, you know, I launched in January 25, and I'm shocked, having been in corporate for such a long time and all of this stuff is really standard, to see like so many small companies without some, you know, some of the really basic stuff. It's a bit of a worry.
Yeah.
Really.
I would agree. I think when I'm, you know, working with a new client, a lot of, thankfully, with all the recent and upcoming employment law changes, it is making people prick their ears up and say, oh, we need to get some help. But actually, when you go and look, and I think, Sarah, as you saying earlier, you then uncover, you know, contracts and policies that haven't been touched in years, and you just think they don't need help for the now. It's actually backtracking. And I would say, I don't know if you guys find this, but the one that's really scaring me the most is the prevention of sexual harassment obligations. And so many employers, it seems to have passed them by, or they don't see how serious it is. And I just think it's going to be like any piece of legislation change that happens, you'll start to see more cases building. And for some employers, it will be too late. So there's a preventative duty to take all reasonable steps to prevent sexual harassment in the workplace. It extends to third parties. That came in October 2024. And I'm still finding employers now that have done absolutely zilch. So for me, that's the one that's probably worrying me the most. I feel like the unfair dismissal rights and the probation piece, we can quite easily fix for people with some support and guidance and documentation and training. But yeah, the sexual harassment one is the one that's probably keeps me awake at night on behalf of my clients, actually.
I think people
and
still
one
don't
that
realise
I think I've started to think about over the last few days since Keir Starmer resigned, looking at who we are likely to get as our next Prime Minister, I think all the changes to trade union access because the others are so big and they immediately require something done, all the changes to the access that trade union will have to a small to medium-sized business is flown under the radar. And I think that's going to come up and bite a lot of people. If Andy Burnham is our next Prime Minister.
Yeah, and I think it's a way of canvassing for new membership, isn't it? It's like a little backdoor into get more membership and stir a few more people up about it.
So much going on, isn't there? Probably load more change again for HR, accountants. It's all going to start again, the big cycle.
Keeps us busy.
Yeah, it does.
So, okay, so our last question is about one piece of advice. So we'll start with you, Jo, and it would be, if you could give one piece of advice to a business owner trying to build a great team, what would it be?
So this is going to come from my original background was training and development, which is my real passion. So I really enjoy HR, but my true passion was training and development. So my one piece of advice would be that train people in your business to train other people. You can have the world's best plumber, best technical expert, but that technical expert doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be a good trainer. But it is a skill that can be learned, but this constantly happens, and we expect people to, train all the new staff. And then we wonder why we're getting to probation periods or where, the person's not the right fit. So definitely make sure that you're developing the skills in your technical experts that you are relying on to train new people in the business.
I love that. Great. Thank you. That's a great bit of advice. Sarah?
So mine's about the culture of your business. Remember, you've got a culture, whether you know what it is, do any work on it or not, you've always got one. So as a business owner, hold yourself to the same standards that you hold your staff to. Live out your values and your goals, and you will find that your culture grows in a positive way rather than a negative one.
Lovely. Thank you. Yeah, really good. And Nikki?
Well, I would say, you can't be everything to everyone. So I would say, as a business owner, similar to what Sarah just said, decide what matters to you in your business. You don't need a position on every issue. Pick what aligns with your business and build from there. I think small, genuine actions beat big, elaborative, sort of show-off type initiatives every time. So just focus small, stay human, and just pick what aligns with yourself.
Stay human. I love that. Wonderful. Thank you. And Lorna?
Yeah, I think it's probably a good amalgamation actually of what Sarah and Nikki just said. If you're building a business and scaling it, you have to get comfortable early with the idea that no one's going to be as passionate about your business as you are, and no one is going to do exactly the same as you do. So I think define early, what are your values, what are your what's your company DNA, and what are your non-negotiables when it comes to growing and scaling and passing on and delegating to other people. What are the things that they really can't deviate from? And what are the things that you are going to give them the freedom to do? And yeah, similar to what Nikki said, and I said it before, treat people like adults and trust them, and that will go such a long way.
Wonderful, thank you. Great advice. Thank you all so much. That's really helpful. We've got so many golden nuggets of information there and useful pieces of advice and hopefully lots of comfort there for people who are having all of these questions. And as you mentioned, Lorna, as well, things that keep people up at night, you know, worrying. And we speak to a lot of people who are either business owners who don't have a senior management team. They're a small company and they feel it's all on their shoulders and they don't always have all the answers. So just having a bit of insight, knowledge to be able to learn and hopefully, as you just mentioned, Nikki, those small steps that make it feel bite-sized and workable and not too overwhelming, so that they can get to a stage where they start on the training and empowering and really driving their culture and their values and all those kind of bits. Hopefully it gives them a little bit more of a direction.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. It's been so insightful. And I think our clients and all the employees out there that listen will just have so many golden nuggets like we have as well to be able to take forward into their business. And I think the overriding message has been treat people like adults, hasn't it? Don't be frightened to just have a real conversation, treat people like adults and humans. And a lot of these issues could just get solved quite quickly.
Yeah, and also I think my takeaway has been that when you were saying that actually by having these conversations, not being frightened that things are going to go to that final stage of legality immediately, you know, there are steps that can be put into place, you know, by having the conversation and not being frightened of, as we said, treating people like people. And we've all got stuff going on, but sometimes you just need to have made that allowance to help, whether that's hours or whatever it may be. So hopefully it makes things more comfortable for people.
Exactly. So thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much.
All right, take care, everybody.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.